Hello BookTube. Before I start with my reading wrap-up, I need to welcome a whole bunch of new subscribers. Thank you very much for coming. I don't know how you got here, and that is making me feel rather bad because I have gone through all the videos that I subscribe to, and although I can't watch all of them, there are not enough hours in the day to watch all of them. I cannot find the person or the video that is responsible for this. So if it was you, thank you very much. Please leave a comment down below so that I can thank you properly. If you are here because of this video or person, please let me know so I can thank them properly. But to all my new subscribers, welcome. I hope you continue to enjoy the content here, and thank you so much. I'm feeling quite motivated. Anyway, you didn't come here to listen to me waffle, so let me get on with my reading wrap-up. So in the last week and a half, 2 weeks, I have read 5 books. And the reason for the air quotation marks is this one, because this is a bind-up of the 3 James Bond books that involve Spectre. Spectre being an organization, it stands for something I can't remember what. It's like Scorpio from Alex Rider. Alex Rising. Oh, good Lord, where did that come from? It's like Scorpio from Alex Rider. But anyway, so with the first book, we have Thunderball, where there are nuclear bombs that have been stolen, and Spectre's goal is to basically blackmail the rest of the world with these nuclear bombs. The second one is to do with chemical warfare kind of a thing. I don't want to spoil anything. Threats to Britain. And the third one is rather strange because it's to do with a suicide assistance with very dangerous plants and animals in Japan. Yeah. So my overall impressions of James Bond, I felt that let me just start off. I felt that I needed to read James Bond because, as I'm sure you know as a reader, there are people out there who claim that they're an expert on a series because they've seen the movie, and all of us go, you're right. So I thought that I would work on my expertise on James Bond and actually read some of them, and this was a nice opportunity. I'm not going to be continuing with James, and I'm not so sure what exactly didn't work for me. There is one thing that I know didn't, but we'll get to that in a moment. So the first thing is that, while I was reading them, I could see that this would be exciting. I could see it's thrilling. I could see that under normal circumstances I'd be sitting at the end of my chair, maybe chewing on a fingernail. But while I could see it, I didn't feel it, which is unusual because usually these are the kind of books that I can get completely lost in. So that part didn't work for me, and I'm not too sure why. The second thing that didn't really work for me is the horrible use of women. So you see, first of all, in James Bond novels, women are either drop dead sexy and beautiful and wanting to shag James, and of course these are all the good girls, or else they are butt ugly and bad. And I thought that's a bit of a stupid generalization, stereotype, message. Women are also, you can tell these books are written in another day and age. James even turned around in one book and he said the most dangerous thing in his opinion was 4 women in a car, because they can't do more than one thing at a time, and when they're talking they need to look at each other. Then there was also the one horrific part where it was in the second book, where the woman said to the guy that she thinks she went there to be raped, went away on holiday. I don't even want to go into that, because anybody who's naive enough to think that rape is a sexual thing should not really be watching YouTube. Well, maybe they should, maybe they'll learn something. But anyway, so I was not impressed with the treatment of women in James Bond, but it is a sign of the time. So, it's like wondering why women in Shakespeare always just wanted to get married, or in Jane Austen. It's a sign of the times. The first story, I enjoyed the plot, Thunderball. The second one, In His Majesty's Service, I was a bit thrown by the female thing even more. And I also felt that James's instant love was a bit pathetic. I mean, he's a player. I understand that it's done to create suspense, but this jaded being does not buy stuff like that. But anyway, I'm glad that I've read some James Bond. And I now think I can say quite safely that I know something about it. It's like he also drinks whiskey. And M and Gadget's not there. I was a bit surprised about that. I thought he would be. But anyway, moving on. The next book I read, this one was for Dewey's, I was going to say the Dewey's Decimal System. Can you tell it's late? This is for the Dewey's 24-hour readathon. And I've finished the whole thing and 100 pages of the next book that I was going to show you. And this is The Other Mrs. Walker by Mary Paulson-Ellis. Now this is a story set in England, mostly Scotland, Edinburgh, and well, London, Edinburgh. It's a combination between the two. And it's basically a story about secrets. There is a family with sisters. There initially were 5 children, the eldest Clementine, a set of twins, and then a set of twins. And the middle set of twins are murdered, actually. I won't spoil anything. Happens very early on. So you've got the 3 girls, the eldest, and then the 2 twins at the bottom. Well, the twins at the bottom, not 2 twins, my mother would say. And she's quite correct. And all of these girls have secrets. And the story then jumps from the historical time, because it's set starting, well, before World War II starts, and then it moves to the present day, 2011 to be precise, where you've got a girl, or a young woman, I shouldn't say girl, she's 40, so a woman who has gone back to Edinburgh to stay with her mother. You've discovered that she's a bit of a kleptomaniac, and she has been fired from her job for, it sounds like a large amount of white-collar crime, etc. And she gets the job of helping these people, because it's the Christmas period, to try and track down relatives for old folks who die without anybody there, to try and find family or, you know, date of birth, names, anything actually. And she gets given the job to find, obviously, one of the ladies, one of the sisters. So you're jumping between the past and the present. And of course the 2 stories are intertwined. It would be silly not to notice that right from square one. She did this really well, actually, because she kept me interested in both timelines, which is rare. Usually I'm interested in one and not so interested in the other. But she kept the suspense going for both, which was quite brilliant. And I was unsure which sister it was for quite some time. In fact, I started doubting all sorts of things. So that was good as well. But the one thing I can't quite understand is why was the need for all the secrecy? I mean, I can see from a plot point of view that the story wouldn't have existed if it weren't for the secrecy. But it was a bit hard to swallow. Why? I can understand some things being secret, or at least being lied about. That I could get. But not the whole thing. That was just strange. So it was a good story, but afterwards I felt, but why? Anyway, and then moving on to the last book. And this is Making History by Stephen Fry. Now, I really enjoy reading Stephen Fry. He is probably my real guilty pleasure, because this man generally is a little bit blasphemous, a little bit naughty, horribly crude, but very intelligent, and I get a kick out of that. And I was expecting something along the same lines with this, and I got the intelligent. I didn't get the vocabulary that he usually throws in, but it was still a very interesting idea. So an idea about what's going on in the story with Making History is that you're in the present day. You've got a doctoral student, his name is Michael Young, and a professor of physics, Leo Zuckerman. And Leo Zuckerman has found a way that he can go and view Auschwitz. And Michael convinces him, because he's doing his doctorate in history on Hitler, that they could try and, instead of killing anybody, because Leo Zuckerman didn't want to kill anybody, but they could prevent Hitler being born. And the 2 of them go about trying to do that. And this story is really looking at what the world would be like without that having happened, well, without Hitler. And I think our initial instinct is that, no, things would be great. But I think Stephen Fry does a fairly decent job of showing that that's not necessarily the case. I think that the story would interest a lot of people. However, it only really gets interesting after the halfway mark, once they have achieved their goal, which obviously they are going to do because it's called making history, and we know what the plan was. So, you know, it's obvious where it's going, and it's obvious that they're going to succeed. So the first half of the book is pretty obvious. After that, it's interesting to see what Fry's theories are. I'm not much of a historian. I'm still very much a novice in that. I'm hoping to change that over time, but yeah, I can't just read everything in a day. So I am not educated enough in the ways of history to decide whether he's got a leg to stand on. Knowing Stephen Fry, though, I would assume that he's done his research quite well. I mean, there are acknowledgements at the back, and he does have almost a bit of a bibliography, so it makes it quite interesting to read. But oddly enough, the one thing that was strange is that usually Stephen Fry writes horribly intellectually, which is something I usually enjoy with his books, although I start getting a bit tired having to haul out the dictionary to go and see what a word means. But this one wasn't, and that was unusual because he's dealing with people at university, you know, somebody who's going for their doctorate, a professor. I was expecting words this long and obscure meanings, and I didn't get that. In fact, it was completely the reverse. Michael Young spoke like some 14-year-old from the 80s. I don't think there was a sentence that didn't have cool dude in it. But I thought it was a strange choice because for such an interesting theory, I kind of would have liked the language to have backed it up a bit. But then maybe the idea was, because, well, I'm pretty sure that his idea was to add some levity to it, to make it a bit lighter, which it does achieve, although I'm not somebody who generally laughs out loud while reading. I don't cry either, just for the record. So it doesn't really work for me. I would rather have had something that was a lot more serious, because I can be serious while reading. Anyway, those are the five books that I've read in the last week and a half. I'm currently in the middle of Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice, and I'm going to be starting Hot Milk by Deborah Levy tonight, if everything goes according to plan. And yeah, until next week, thank you so much for watching. Cheers for now.